Hi, my name is Alana Meraz, and I am the founder of Latinix In Sports, and it is my privilege to welcome you to the Chicago Baseball and Educational Academy's Winter Meetings Women in Baseball series. Today, I have the pleasure to host this important conversation with a woman in baseball who we have the pleasure to have on our advisory board at Latinix In Sports, and someone I look up to, Yvonne Carrasco, Senior Director of Baseball at Wasserman. Yvonne, thank you so much for being here and supporting CBEA with giving us your time right around the start of baseball season.
Thank you so much, Alana. I am very happy to be here with you and support you both in Latinx in sports and also just be part of this important conversations for CBEA. I know they have a multitude of really helpful resources for underserved communities who are interested in sports, women who are interested in sports. So I'm just very thrilled that we have this platform and that we're talking today.
Yes, so excited. So let's get started. Could you tell us what your role at Wasserman is, like what you do day to day there, your day job, for some people that may not be aware?
Yeah, sure. So, as you mentioned, I'm the senior director of baseball. The longer title is player relations at Wasserman. So, my role is, working cohesively with the player agents. I would call myself more of a day-to-day manager. So that sort of work entails obviously managing MLB players from an off-field standpoint. So, marketing, public relations, digital marketing deals, advising on social media, philanthropy, everything and anything that kind of comes across in terms of off the field matters. So yeah.
Very exciting. So could you tell us what, got you to this role, what your journey in the sports industry has been so far, and how you became the director of baseball at Wasserman?
Sure, would love to. So I've been at Wasserman, I believe, almost 4 years. Prior to that, I was at the Dodgers in the PR department for 10 years, quite a long time. So that was the bulk of my baseball career to date. Um, I actually, I sort of important point in my journey is I didn't really know anyone in sports or in baseball when I started out. So I did start in the sort of PR agency world, working with um, pretty well-known brands such as Toyota and Nike, and that kind of was put me in a position to be qualified to apply for the position with the Dodgers in the PR department. At that time, which was 2007, they were seeking someone who could proactively pitch stories, storytell for them in a PR role, but as well they wanted someone who was bilingual, Spanish English. So that kind of absolutely helped open that door for me. I had both of those. Luckily, I went in for a few interviews and ended up staying there for 10 years. And through those 10 years, made a multitude of friendships and connections in the sports world, entertainment world. All that you could imagine comes with being aligned with a team in Los Angeles. Incredible experience, throughout. Through those years, along that same vein, I started to understand the player representation business, sort of in the latter years of my career at the Dodgers. I started to talk to a lot of agents and understand what they do and what their job entails. I was very interested because at that point, what I found to be most fulfilling for me personally was working with players and helping tell their stories while at the Dodgers. I was interested in sort of learning more about that. So, like I said, started to kind of engage with and talk to agents who happened to be at the field while I was working, asking a bunch of questions about, how they're structured and what sort of resources their agencies provide to different players. Got to know different agents, agencies, and sort of identify that that's kind of the path I wanted to take. I wanted to be on that side. I wanted to work in a player manager role in the player representation business for those reasons. So, long story short, I basically pitched and created this position to my employer, Wasserman, through my colleague, Andy Moda, who's a longtime agent there, who's also the son of Manny Moda, who was a coach at the Dodgers. So that family and his brother Jose at the Angels were very pivotal in my journey in terms of supporting me and in terms of encouraging me. So it was through Andy that I started to have those conversations, and we were able to sort of develop this position, and he was able to kind of get me into Wasserman to talk to the other agents and, make a case for the fact that they needed me there.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like oftentimes, being a woman in the sports industry, it's really important to have those allies and that support system when wanting to further your career in the industry. For women in baseball, I feel like that didn't really exist 10, 15 years ago, and it would have been considered really rare. So, what do you feel has been your biggest challenge you have faced as a woman in this male dominated business? And what advice would you give to women and young girls who want to be in your shoes one day?
That's a great question. I feel there have been so many challenges along the way, but I definitely want to focus on the beginning because I feel like, sadly, I feel like sometimes the challenges that women are presented at the beginning of their careers in baseball sort of divert them to other careers, and I'd like to kind of shine a light on that and bring awareness to that. And I hope we all can work towards making it a little bit more welcoming. And I think things have certainly changed since 2007-ish. But I felt like in the beginning, there were like extra eyes on everything I did, especially in the portion of my career where I started to directly communicate with players, was in the clubhouse, was in all areas that were, accessible to players. Something that I found unique to women, around me, it wasn't, if a male colleague was, performing the same job, it didn't seem like that there was all these sets of eyes on them. So at the very start of my career, I found that to be very intimidating and almost like, it makes me feel, I'm a little uncomfortable. I don't know if this is something like I want to do long term. Like this seems like this is like a big hurdle. And then just kind of, conversations of like, you have to prove yourself and you have to look this way or dress that way, things like that at the beginning, which were very new to me. Was never in a field or a career or position where these things were even, even brought up, I would say. I hung in there. My advice in terms of those sort of hurdles that are specific to women, that was specific to me, is I think all you can do is focus on what you're doing. I found it to be an added layer of motivation. Like, sure, great, I'll prove myself. I have no problem with that. I'm confident in my abilities. I'm confident that I've earned, the spot that I have, at that time at the Dodgers. I feel capable, and that this is great. I'll just, kind of tunnel vision. And that's what you need to do, I feel like, in circumstances like that. And just in general in life, is just focus, on your tasks at hand and what you want and what your end goals are, and just learn to sort of drown out that noise. And also, we are so blessed in our industry to have a huge network of support that, various women in baseball who came way before me, women who came up, through the team side alongside me, who I became really good friends with, and just sharing experiences and having candid conversations and becoming friends and cheering each other on. Like, that to me was very inspiring and pivotal too. So once I started sort of forming that community around me and all those wonderful positive voices that understood the same things that I kind of, shared with them, and were dealing with the same sorts of things and even other things as well, that too was empowering. That made us all kind of want to root for each other more and check in with each other all the time and encourage each other. And when we had successes, cheer for each other. So I think that was hugely positive. And I mentioned the Moto family. There were various, people like that as well. Male colleagues who were extremely pivotal in my career. The Moto family, Fernando Valenzuela, the Harin family, so many people that came along the way, through the Dodgers. And now, of course, my colleagues at Wasserman, who've been nothing but wonderful and supportive of anything and everything I wanted to do. I mean, it's any idea, any role that I want to take on to date, just great, do it, and that's all we ask, right? All we ask is that opportunity and to be able to work hard and do our job and do it well. I think is basically what I would advise.
So what progress do you think still needs to be made for true gender equality? And how do you recommend women kind of make sure that they're paid the equivalent of their male counterparts in the baseball industry?
Oh, that's a great question. when we talk about equality, there's also the issue of equity. I think that falls into more of what you're asking. So I think I'll focus on equity. And, I can speak only to women who work in front offices. I have that experience for women who work on the agency side. So I think I'll just kind of talk through that a little bit because I think it's important. I would love to see sort of similar to, like, speaking in baseball terms, like sort of like a talent pipeline, that the league runs and that the league has in place for women in their front offices, for women, for recruiting women, and not just women, just, candidates, diverse candidates, throughout, throughout their offices, throughout their networks, and also when you're giving opportunities from the ground up, allowing someone to come into the industry. I would love to see more of an effort and a pipeline in developing talent for these people. So, identifying the talented and qualified individuals you have on the front office side and ensuring that they're on a clear path to get where they want to go and know what their options are. So, for example, if they're in a certain department and they've reached a ceiling, let's not hold them in the position for several years. Let's say, let's take the time to assess their skill set and suggest, like, hey, listen, you might have reached your ceiling here. And I bring this up because you see women kind of in the same positions for over the course of so many years in baseball, and you kind of wonder why. And then, it definitely should have taken 3 decades for Kim Ng to become a GM. And this is where this comes from, right? So, a clear path that, where skills are identified, and then, these talented, qualified individuals are put on a path to get where they want to go, and have the tools necessary to make these decisions, career decisions, in terms of other options for them. Like I said, going back to that conversation. So let's say you reach the ceiling in your individual department, right? Okay, so you have baseball information experience, that's part of the PR department. Let's put you in player development and baseball ops. I feel like those skills are transferable. Let's kind of develop you in the operations realm, in that way, perhaps maybe more women are on that path to be the next Kim. So I think I would love to see a little bit more of a formal effort or plan to kind of direct these qualified, diverse candidates throughout baseball. And also on the recruitment side, I think what you're doing with Latinix In Sports, for example, I would love for the league to, reach out and do more partnerships externally that can broaden their candidate base to get more diverse candidates for the roles that they're posting. I think that's the natural sort of, I think that could only help, right? I can name so many organizations like Latinx In Sports throughout that are in different cities, there's so many, but, perhaps building that network, having those partnerships so that these entities, these nonprofits, these groups can help direct some candidates that are thrown their way to positions. So all these layers, I feel like, can help long-term equity. And then to answer your question about, I think you answered about salary equity, pay equity.
Mm-hmm. I feel like that's often a different conversation that people, especially women, really are having. So definitely some advice about how to overcome that.
I love, I think, you brought the subject of having allies, right? And I think there's a big difference in allies and being an active ally. So I think that comes to play here in this situation. In an ideal world, your allies would be active allies in that there would be sort of a transparency. So say you have these mentors or these colleagues in baseball, your male counterparts, it would be nice for them to share some information with you. Hey, I don't know, they go get a promotion, they get a raise. What does that look like? How far off I am? Doesn't have to be anything public, but just, private conversation where you have that knowledge, because without knowing exactly where you fall, it's hard to go in and advocate for yourself, and have a productive conversation. So when you're an active ally, you're doing that. When you're an active ally, if you're in a position where you're supervising someone like myself or whatnot, when you're an active ally, you're making a case for me. You yourself sort of have the books in front of you, right? You know what this person is making, or this person is making by gender, et cetera, whatnot, if you really want to kind of dive in, right? So the accountability factor, kind of being open and honest and looking like, is there equity in my department? You know, is every qualified candidate, do they have a salary that is completely equal for what they're offering, regardless of gender, background, et cetera? That too, that helps, that helps. And sort of evening out any sort of differences there, that helps as well. And then, sort of, I guess, third would be, on the active ally theme, someone who isn't afraid to help you advocate for yourself and be vocal with you and have your back. If you go in and you make a good case for a promotion or a salary, it only gets that more powerful if someone behind you who is in a position that's higher than you, who most likely, if it's baseball, it's a male, he's doing the same for you, that there's support behind that, there's power behind that. So I can't emphasize enough the need for our male counterparts, in baseball, to kind of take that active role. And those are just a few ways I think that they can do that.
Yeah, of course. I think, like we were saying, allies are super important. Like kind of the first point, pipelines definitely, I think, are being created now within those organizations like Latinx in Sports, and so many countless other ones that are already established in the sports industry. So hopefully we'll see some leagues, like you said, external partnerships, and hopefully diversify the space. Circling kind of back to what you were saying, when you started in the sports industry, you didn't really know anyone when you were breaking in. And I think a lot of people now talk about how it's who and making those connections. So for you, what advice do you kind of have for networking and approaching those sports professionals if you're a young professional that wants to break into the sports industry?
Absolutely great question. So, yeah, I didn't know anyone, and I definitely want to encourage people to take that as a, sign of, I guess, encouragement. It's not who you know. And certainly, we're lucky now. It's a little different than when I first started. It's so much easier to find these people who are in these positions that perhaps you want in the future for yourself, who possibly were in the same boat as me and didn't have a connection right off, and for that reason are that much more available and that much more enthused to reply to emails or LinkedIn messages and make themselves available to you. So I highly encourage anyone who's wanting to work in baseball. I promise you, there are a multitude of men and women out there in the industry who love to hear from you, who want to give you a few moments of their time. Please don't be shy. I think that if you're not doing that, you must start doing that.
Yeah, no, of course. I completely agree. And I know when I was, in high school, college, I kind of thought that the sports industry was like, hey, you're either an athlete or you're a GM, a coach kind of things. And I didn't really know about all the different business opportunities that there were behind it. So what are some opportunities that you think in your eyes, young people, young professionals that are looking to break in should be more aware of?
Yeah, like you said, I had the same thought as you growing up. You're not really sort of aware of all the different layers that go into a sports organization or, behind the sports agency world. There's so many opportunities that I think, could be more valuable with more diverse candidates, and just as a whole, like young people should sort of consider as they're sort of going through school and going through college, etc. There's a whole creative side to sports, whether it's video production, content creation, content management, social media. There's all of that, and it continues to grow both on the team side and on the agency side, and even on the sports brand side. That's an entire huge opportunity if that's something that you personally find fulfilling and you love, you're creative by nature. There is a spot for you in sports. I think we talked about my particular experience. We touched on PR marketing. There's that, there's both on the team side, agency side, brand side. There's always going to be a need for that. And I definitely want to encourage, encourage young people who are wanting to work in baseball specifically to sort of, do a little research and learn about the various positions that are within baseball operations, because there's so many layers to that now. It used to be kind of like you had your scouting department and, sort of things like that. But there's like an analytics layer to it that is basically at every club now, that opens doors for candidates who are qualified, to do that. Player development, I think, is a really interesting one as well, which I mentioned that one because a lot of the time, when there are these roles in different markets, like for example, when teams have facilities in the Dominican Republic, a lot of that staff is obviously bilingual. So there are a lot of these positions as well. That one, for example, that would open up opportunities for bilingual candidates, Spanish, English. There's over, I think it was a few years ago that they made official the team interpreter role at teams. That as well. That's a position that really, I mean, that is open to only bilingual Spanish English candidates who are predominantly obviously Latinx. So that's something that you can kind of keep your eyes on as well. But gosh, yeah, there's so much that you can look into, and so many layers to it that you should definitely explore and ask questions. And like I said, reach out. There's so many people that want to answer these questions and want to welcome you and help you break in.
Yeah, of course. And then kind of just, reflecting on your time at Wasserman and the Dodgers, what has been one of your favorite projects to work on, or, one of those special, unique projects that you're able to help either at Wasserman, Dodgers, whether it was the league, team, with an athlete, what has been one of your favorites?
Oh, I love that question. So I guess since this is for CBEA, I'll just make it Chicago specific. So I'm blessed to be able to work with Javy Baez of the Cubs on several initiatives. He does a lot in his hometown and his island of Puerto Rico, along with his brother-in-law Jose Berrios of the Twins. I think one of my favorite projects, there's been many, it has been helping them organize free baseball clinics where they're from, which is Bayamon in Puerto Rico. Just being able to sort of put that together for them and see them interact with and give back to the community that they grew up in has been awesome. Keeping them connected there throughout the season, keeping them involved, I think has had a lot of meaning to me and to them as well. So that has been definitely a favorite project, be able to kind of just help them do whatever they want to give back there. It's really important. And as you know, over the past several years, there have been a couple hurricanes down there. It seems, unfortunately, that Puerto Rico has been hit with some very unfortunate incidents that they always rise up. I mean, during COVID last year, when we were kind of waiting for the season to start, they handed out food, for a couple hours, just out of, the goodness of their heart, and just helping them be able to kind of just put that together. Like, hey, we want to hand out free food. Like, people are hurting here. The COVID situation is bad. Like, how do we do this? Like, and working with my partner, Sammy, who's out there. All those things, I think, to me, I hold in my heart a lot, and I find very fulfilling.
What has been the most helpful piece of advice or guidance that someone has shared with you early on in your career?
Great question. I think I am grateful for the fact that very early on, I understood the concept of conserving and prioritizing integrity in all that you do, in all that you are, in how you present yourself. And I'm not saying physically present yourself. I'm saying how you present yourself from a professional standpoint. How you operate with your colleagues, how you operate with, colleagues throughout the league, just every layer of your job and your business, that you prioritize integrity, that keeps you in the game long term. And I think that was an invaluable piece of advice I got early on, for sure.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's super important. It's how you carry yourself professionally and all those relationships that you're able to create in the sports industry, since we're so small and everyone knows everyone. From a gender equality and equity kind of standpoint, what aspirations do you have for baseball over the next 20 to 50 years?
Great question. I think that both sort of on and off the field, creating these pipelines, I hope to see, and hopefully sooner than 20 years, I hope to see there be better representation just all around, racial, socioeconomic, gender diversity on and off the field. I think we've seen some great success stories as of late, in coaching. Bianca Smith from the Red Sox for one. That's a great sign. Obviously, Kim Ng's hiring was extremely meaningful to the entire baseball community. That I think that was a very special day for women and inspiring. So you see that, but like I said, all these efforts can go to ensure that the next candidate isn't too far behind from Kim or too far behind from Bianca. That there isn't, that pipeline is constantly giving. That these positions, we don't have to wait another, God forbid, 30 years to see another woman in a spot as a GM for a team. I hope that doesn't take that long. So, like I said, the importance of sort of making sure that support is in place, so that we have that number go up, consistently, hopefully.
Yeah, I think there's, that quote that says the future is female. And I think a lot of people now seeing Bianca, Alyssa, Kim, the future isn't female, the future is now, like it's happening right now, and we're breaking those barriers and we're making a stride in the baseball industry, which is incredible. Well, Yvonne, thank you so much for your time today for the CBEA Women in Baseball series. It's been a pleasure and a privilege to hear about your journey and know you're an inspiration to many young women and young girls. Please consider supporting Chicago Baseball and Educational Academy as they continue their mission to provide high-quality baseball education and mentoring programs to Chicago youth. Thank you, Yvonne.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Very grateful.